The knife stopped an inch from her throat. "You're lying," Cale Draven said, his voice low enough to freeze bone. "No one carries what you claim to carry. Not from me." Mara didn't flinch. Couldn't afford to. Not with her back against stone and half the hold listening through the door. "I'm not asking you to believe me," she said quietly. "I'm telling you what is." His hand didn't move. Neither did his eyes. Winter gray, unreadable, and sharp enough to gut the truth from a liar in 3 seconds flat. She wasn't lying. That was the problem. If you want to see how a woman with nothing but thread and nerve survives the impossible, stay until the end. Like this video, drop your city in the comments, and let's begin. The wind off the northern range didn't howl. It cut. Mara Valen pulled her cloak tighter and kept walking, boots crunching through snow that hadn't seen a thaw in 6 weeks. Frosthold sat ahead like a scar on the mountainside. Gray stone, sharp towers, no warmth to speak of. She'd seen warmer prisons, but prisons didn't pay. The silver she'd been promised for this job would clear her father's debt. All of it. 3 years of interest, penalty fees, and the kind of collection methods that left people missing fingers. She didn't have 3 years. She had 7 weeks, a satchel of tools, and a reputation for being the best cloakmaker east of the Pale Ridge. That reputation was the only reason she was here. The gates opened without ceremony. No guard stepped forward to greet her. No steward offered introductions. Just a young woman in servant's gray who gestured once and started walking. Mara followed. Inside, the hold was exactly what she'd expected. Stone floors, narrow halls, the smell of wood smoke and wet fur. Wolves, she reminded herself. Not dogs. The people who lived here weren't entirely human, even if they walked on 2 legs most of the time. They passed a great hall where a dozen men sat sharpening blades in silence. Every single one of them looked up when she walked by. Not with curiosity, with assessment. Mara kept her eyes forward. The servant led her down 2 more corridors before stopping outside a heavy oak door. She knocked twice, then left without a word. "Enter." The voice was deep, clipped, and carried the kind of authority that didn't need volume. Mara pushed the door open. The room was sparse. Work table, shelves lined with maps and ledgers, a single chair behind a desk scarred with age. Standing beside it was a man who looked like he'd been carved from the same stone as the hold itself. Cale Draven. She'd heard the stories. Everyone had. The Wolf King who took Frosthold at 19 after his father's throat was torn out in a challenge. The Alpha who'd held the northern packs together through 5 brutal winters and twice as many attempted coups. The man whose bloodline was supposed to be ancient, unbreakable, and according to the whispers, dying with him. He didn't look dying. He looked like a siege weapon in human form. "You're the craftswoman," he said. Not a question. Mara Valen. She set her satchel down carefully. "I'm here for the cloaks." 7. Battle grade. Reinforced at the shoulder and spine, weight distributed for movement, dyed to hold in snow and shadow. His eyes, pale gray, unsettling, flicked over her like he was measuring her the same way she'd measure fabric. "You were told the terms?" "Half now, half on delivery. 8 weeks." 7. She didn't blink. "Then I'll need access to your best hides, uninterrupted workspace, and no one touching my tools. You'll have a room in the East Wing. Materials will be brought to you. Meals twice a day." He paused. "You don't leave the hold until the work is finished." That wasn't part of the agreement. "I wasn't told I'd be confined," Mara said evenly. "You weren't told a lot of things." Cale's expression didn't shift. "This isn't a negotiation. You finish the work, you get paid, you leave. Until then, you stay inside these walls." Her jaw tightened. She needed the silver too badly to walk away, and he knew it. "Fine." "Good." He turned back to the desk, dismissing her with the gesture. "Elin will show you to your room. Start tomorrow." Mara picked up her satchel and left before her mouth could get her into trouble. What? The room was small but clean. Bed, brazier, table near the window. She set her tools out in careful rows, checking each one. Shears, needles, awls, thread spools in 6 weights. Everything she'd need. The light was already fading. She lit a single candle and sat by the window, looking out over the courtyard below. A group of wolves, actual wolves, 4-legged and massive, moved through the snow in formation. Behind them, two men in furs spoke in low voices, their breath misting in the cold. One of them glanced up toward her window. She stepped back. This place had rules she didn't know yet, the kind you learned by watching, not asking. Dinner came an hour later. Bread, venison, something bitter and green she didn't recognize. The woman who brought it didn't speak, didn't linger. Mara ate quickly, banked the brazier, and lay down without bothering to undress. Sleep didn't come easy. The wind rattled the shutters. Somewhere below, a wolf howled, long, low, and answered by three others. She stared at the ceiling and thought about Silver, about her father's ruined hands and the men who'd come to collect, about the way desperation tasted when you swallowed it every morning for a year. 7 weeks. She could survive 7 weeks of anything. The next morning, Mara woke to the sound of steel on steel. She dressed fast and went to the window. The courtyard was full of fighters, 24 at least, moving through drills with the kind of precision that came from real combat, not practice. A tall man with a braided beard barked orders. The others obeyed without hesitation. Kael was there too, off to the side, watching. Even from a distance, he stood out. Not because of size, though he was built like a landslide, but because of the way the others moved around him. Like gravity worked differently in his presence. A knock at the door pulled her attention away. "Materials?" a gruff voice said. She opened it. A man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow stood there, arms full of bundled hides. He dropped them on her table without ceremony. "More coming this afternoon. You need anything else? Tell Elin." He looked her over once, expression unreadable. "Don't wander." Then he was gone. Mara shut the door and turned to the hides. They were good. Better than good. Thick, supple, the kind of leather that would turn a blade if you worked it right. She ran her fingers over the grain, checking for flaws. None. Whoever sourced these knew what they were doing. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The first 3 days passed in a blur of cutting, stitching, and silence. Mara worked from dawn until her hands cramped, then worked some more. She barely saw anyone. Meals appeared at her door, the hides kept coming, the brazier stayed lit. On the 4th day, she ran out of a specific thread weight and had to leave her room to find Elin. The halls were quieter than she expected. She passed a few servants, a man carrying firewood, a child who stared at her with unblinking yellow eyes before darting into a side room. She found Elin in the kitchens, kneading dough with methodical efficiency. "I need heavier thread," Mara said, "the kind used for saddle repair." Elin didn't look up. "Storeroom, end of the south hall. Take what you need." "Is it locked?" "No." Mara hesitated. "Should I ask someone first?" "I just told you to take it." Elin's hands never stopped moving. "You're overthinking." "Fair enough." The storeroom was exactly where Elin said it would be. A long, narrow space lined with shelves holding everything from lamp oil to bundled wool. Mara found the thread on the 3rd shelf, grabbed 2 spools, and turned to leave. Voices stopped her. 2 men, just outside the door. Close enough that she could hear every word. "Doesn't matter what he wants," one of them said. Low voice, impatient. "The line ends with him. Everyone knows it. Careful." The second man's voice was older, steadier. "That's not something you say out loud." "Why not?" "It's true. No heirs, no future. The packs are already looking elsewhere. Let them look. Kael's held this place longer than anyone thought he would. And when he's gone, then what?" A pause. "Then we'll deal with it." Footsteps moved away. Mara stayed frozen, thread spools clutched in her hands. No heirs, no future. She'd heard rumors, sure, everyone had. But hearing it stated as fact, cold, plain, undeniable, was different. She waited until the hall went silent, then slipped out and walked back to her room without looking at anyone. That night she couldn't focus. Her hands moved through the stitching patterns automatically, but her mind kept circling back to what she'd heard. The line ends with him. She didn't know why it bothered her. It wasn't her problem. She wasn't part of this place, wasn't part of their politics or their bloodlines. She was here to make cloaks and get paid. That was all. But the thought lingered. She worked until midnight, then gave up and went to bed. Sleep came thin and restless. The second week started with a problem. One of the hides had a flaw she'd missed, a thin patch near the shoulder that wouldn't hold under stress. She could work around it, but it would take time she didn't have. She went looking for Elin again, found her in the Great Hall instead. The room was full. 30 people at least, seated at long tables eating in clusters. The noise was overwhelming after days of near silence. Elin spotted her and waved her over. Sit, eat. I need to talk to you about after you eat. Mara sat. A plate appeared in front of her. Meat, bread, roasted roots. She ate quickly, aware of the eyes on her. Not hostile exactly, just watchful. Across the room, Kael sat at the head table, speaking quietly with the man who'd brought her the first hides. He didn't look her way. You're the cloak maker. Mara turned. A woman about her age sat down beside her, curious smile in place. I am. How's it going? Fine. You don't talk much, do you? Not when I'm working. The woman laughed. Fair. I'm Sarah. I run the kennels. Mara. I know. Sarah leaned in slightly. Everyone knows. You're the first outsider Kael's brought in for work in 2 years. Why's that? Sarah shrugged. Trust issues. Can you blame him? Before Mara could answer, a man's voice cut through the noise. Sarah, stop bothering the contractor. The tall man with the braided beard stood a few feet away, arms crossed. Sarah rolled her eyes. She's not bothered, Torrin. She looks bothered. I'm fine, Mara said flatly. Torrin studied her for a moment, then nodded once and walked away. Sarah grinned. He's the captain of the guard. Decent guy. Terrible sense of humor. Mara finished her meal in silence, then caught Elin's eye and gestured toward the door. They stepped into the hall. One of the hides has a weak spot, Mara said. I need a replacement. Elin frowned. You sure? Positive. I'll have it sent up by tonight. Thank you. Elin tilted her head slightly, studying her. You settling in all right? I'm here to work, not settle. Right. Elin's expression didn't change, but something in her tone shifted. Just remember, people here notice things. Don't give them a reason to notice you. It wasn't a threat, it was advice. Mara nodded and went back to her room. 3 weeks in, her body started acting strange. At first she ignored it. Exhaustion, probably. She was working 14-hour days, sleeping poorly, eating irregularly. Of course she felt off. But then the nausea started. She'd wake up dizzy, throat tight, stomach rebelling against food she'd eaten 100 times before. She told herself it was stress. Bad water. Something she'd caught from the cold. It wasn't. By the end of the 4th week, she knew. She sat on the edge of her bed, hands shaking, staring at nothing. This wasn't possible. She hadn't touched anyone, hadn't been with anyone in over a year. There was no logical explanation, no rational cause. And yet, her body didn't lie. Panic tried to claw its way up her throat. She shoved it down hard. Think. She couldn't tell anyone. Not here. Not in a place where power and bloodlines meant everything and outsiders meant nothing. If he found out, no. She'd finish the job, keep her head down, get her silver and disappear before anyone noticed. She could do that. She had to. Sad. The 5th week, Kael started appearing. Not often. Just more than before. He'd walk through the corridor outside her room, pause, keep going. He'd be in the Great Hall when she came down for meals, watching without watching. Once, she looked up from her work to find him standing in her doorway. How's the progress? He asked. On schedule? Good. He didn't leave. Something else? Mara asked, keeping her tone neutral. You've been quieter than usual. I'm always quiet. Not like this. She met his eyes. I'm working. That's what you hired me for. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once and left. Mara's hands didn't stop shaking for an hour. Pause. By the 6th week, she'd finished 4 of the 7 cloaks. They were perfect. She knew they were. Each one balanced, reinforced, dyed to blend into winter terrain. The kind of work that would last a decade if treated right. But her body was getting harder to ignore. The nausea had eased, but the exhaustion hadn't. And there were other signs now. Small, subtle, but undeniable. She started wearing looser tunics, avoided the Great Hall, worked longer hours so she'd have an excuse to skip meals. It almost worked. Then Torrin knocked on her door. King wants to see you. Her heart dropped. Why? Didn't say. She followed him down to Kael's study, every step feeling like walking toward a cliff edge. Kael was alone, standing by the window. Close the door, he said without turning. She did. He turned to face her. You're scared, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. I'm fine. You're lying. Mara's jaw tightened. What do you want? The truth. He took a step closer. Something's wrong. I can smell it. Her breath caught. Smell it. Of course. He wasn't just a king, he was a wolf. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, forcing her voice steady. Yes, you do. His eyes locked onto hers. And if you don't tell me, I'll find out anyway. The room felt too small, too quiet. Mara's hands curled into fists at her sides. She could lie. She could run. She could fight. None of it would matter, so she did the only thing left. She told him the truth. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed could have shattered stone. Kael didn't move, didn't blink. That's not possible, he said finally, voice flat. I know. You haven't been with anyone here. I haven't been with anyone anywhere. Then how? I don't know. The words came out sharper than she intended. She took a breath, steadied herself. I don't know, but it's happening, and I don't expect you to believe me, and I don't expect you to help. I just need to finish my contract and leave. Kael stared at her. Then slowly he crossed the room and stopped less than a foot away. Show me. What? Your wrist. Give me your wrist. She didn't understand, but she held out her hand. He took it carefully, fingers pressing against her pulse point. His expression changed, not shock, not anger, something worse, recognition. No, he said quietly. No, that's... He let go and stepped back, running a hand through his hair. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. It's not... He stopped, looked at her. You're telling the truth. I know. How long? 6 weeks. Maybe 7. He went very still. That's when you arrived. Mara said nothing. Kael turned away, bracing his hands on the desk like he needed the support. You need to leave, he said. Tonight, before anyone else finds out. I can't. I don't have the silver yet. I'll pay you. Full price. Just go. Why? He didn't answer. Tell me why, she pressed. Kael's shoulders tightened. When he spoke again, his voice was low, raw. Because if this is what I think it is, keeping you here will get you killed. The words hung in the air between them. Mara's pulse hammered in her throat. What do you think it is? He turned back to face her, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she saw fear in his eyes. Something that was supposed to be impossible. Mara didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, watching the courtyard below turn silver under moonlight, replaying Kael's words until they lost meaning. Something that was supposed to be impossible. He'd offered her silver, told her to leave, and she'd refused. Not out of bravery, out of practicality. Running in the middle of winter with no supplies, no destination, and a body that was changing in ways she didn't understand. That wasn't survival. That was suicide. So she'd looked him in the eye and said, I'm finishing the contract. He'd stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. But the alternative was worse. Running meant admitting she was scared, meant giving up the only leverage she had, her skill, her work, the fact that Kael needed those cloaks finished and she was the only one who could do it right. You don't know what you're asking, he'd said, voice low and strained. I'm not asking for anything. I'm telling you what I'm doing. Then you're a fool. Probably. She'd picked up her satchel from where she'd dropped it. But I'm a fool who's going to finish your commission. After that, you'll never see me again. She'd walked out before he could argue. Now, hours later, the weight of that decision sat heavy in her chest. The wind rattled the shutters. Somewhere in the hold, a door slammed. Mara pulled her blanket tighter and watched the stars crawl across the sky until dawn bled through the darkness. When the light came, she got up and went back to work. The next 3 days passed in a haze of thread and leather and mounting exhaustion. Mara pushed herself harder than she should have. 16-hour days. Meals skipped. Sleep measured in minutes, not hours. She told herself it was about meeting the deadline, but the truth sat darker in her gut. If she stopped moving, she'd have to think. And thinking led to questions she couldn't answer. The fifth cloak came together with the kind of precision that only existed when your hands moved faster than your mind. She finished the final seam just after midnight, held it up to the lamplight, and felt nothing. No pride, no satisfaction, just the cold knowledge that she had 2 more to go. She set it aside and reached for the next hide. Her hands were shaking. She ignored them. The needle slipped, once, twice. On the 3rd attempt, it bit into her thumb deep enough to draw blood. Mara hissed and pulled back, pressing the wound against her tunic. The fabric came away stained red. She stared at it. Then, without warning, her stomach lurched. She barely made it to the basin before she was sick. It lasted longer than it should have. When it finally stopped, she sat back on her heels, breathing hard, tasting bile and copper. This is getting worse. She washed her hands, rinsed her mouth, and went back to the table. The work didn't care how she felt. Neither did the deadline. She picked up the needle again. The whispers started on the 8th day. Mara didn't hear them directly. She wasn't supposed to. But the hold wasn't built for secrets, and servants talked when they thought no one was listening. She caught pieces, fragments. Looks terrible. But barely eating. Wonder if she's sick. She kept her head down and kept working, but the attention didn't stop. Sarah found her in the great hall during the midday meal, sat down without asking, and studied her with open concern. "You look like death," Sarah said bluntly. "Thanks. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept?" "Last night." "For how long?" Mara didn't answer. Sarah sighed. "You're going to collapse if you keep this up." "I'm fine." "You're not, and people are starting to notice." Mara's jaw tightened. "Let them notice. I'll be gone soon enough." "That's not how this works." Sarah leaned in, lowering her voice. "This place runs on suspicion. You act strange. People wonder why. They wonder long enough, someone starts asking questions you don't want asked. Then they can ask someone else. Mara, I said I'm fine." Sarah held her gaze for a long moment, then shook her head and stood. "Suit yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you." She walked away. Mara forced herself to finish her meal, even though every bite sat like gravel in her stomach. That afternoon, Torin appeared at her door. "King wants to see you." Again. Mara set down her tools and followed him without a word. Kale wasn't in his study this time. He was in the armory, a long, low-ceilinged room lined with weapons and armor that smelled like oil and old steel. He dismissed Torin with a gesture, waited until the door closed, then turned to face her. "You look worse," he said flatly. "Good morning to you too. This isn't a joke. I'm not laughing." Kale's expression darkened. "You're pushing yourself too hard. I'm finishing the job. You're killing yourself." "That's dramatic." "Is it?" He crossed the space between them in 3 strides, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "You can barely stand. You're not eating. You're not sleeping. And whatever's happening to you is getting worse." "I'll manage." "No, you won't." His voice dropped. "I can smell it, Mara. The sickness, the exhaustion, the fear. You're falling apart and you're too stubborn to admit it." She lifted her chin. "What do you want me to say?" "That you'll stop. That you'll rest. That you'll let me help." "I don't need help. Everyone needs help. Not from you." The words came out harsher than she meant them. Kyle flinched like she'd struck him. Then his jaw set. "Fine," he said coldly. "Do it your way. But when you collapse in the middle of the hall and the entire pack finds out what you're carrying, don't expect me to protect you." He walked past her and out the door, leaving her alone in the armory. Mara stood there, fists clenched, heart hammering. She'd just made an enemy of the only person who knew the truth. Smart. 2 more days passed. The 6th cloak was nearly done. Just the final reinforcements and the dye work. She could finish it by tomorrow if she pushed through the night. She was halfway through the stitching when someone knocked. Not Elin, not Sarah. A man she didn't recognize. Older, sharp-eyed, dressed in dark leathers. "Mara Valen." "Yes. I'm Davos, the king's advisor." He stepped inside without waiting for permission. We need to talk. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, but turning him away would draw more attention than letting him in. She set down her needle. About what? You. Davos closed the door behind him, eyes scanning the room, the cloaks, the tools, her. You've been here 6 weeks. In that time, you've barely spoken to anyone, avoided public spaces, and started looking sicker by the day. I'm working. That's what I was hired to do. And yet the king has taken a personal interest in your well-being. Davos tilted his head. That's unusual. He wants the job done right. Perhaps. Davos moved closer, studying her face with the kind of focus that made her skin crawl. Or perhaps there's something else. Something you're not telling us. I'm a contractor. I don't owe you my life story. No, but you owe us honesty. His voice went cold. And I don't believe you're being honest. Mara met his gaze without flinching. Believe whatever you want. I'll be gone in 2 weeks. Will you? The question hung in the air like a blade. What's that supposed to mean? Mara asked quietly. It means I've seen women hide pregnancies before. Davos said the word like a weapon. And you have all the signs. Her blood turned to ice. You're mistaken. Am I? He stepped closer. Sickness, exhaustion, loose clothing, avoiding the great hall where the scent of meat might turn your stomach. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You're not as subtle as you think. Mara forced herself to stay calm. Even if I were pregnant, which I'm not, it wouldn't be any of your business. It is if you're carrying a wolf's child. I'm not. Then you won't mind if I have our healer examine you. I absolutely would mind. Why? Because I have the right to privacy. Not here, you don't. Davos's tone shifted, colder now. You're in Frosthold, under our roof, eating our food, using our resources. That makes you our concern. I'm finishing a contract. And when that contract is done, what then? You disappear? Take whatever you're hiding with you? He leaned in. I don't think so. Mara's pulse hammered in her throat. She'd been careful, so careful, but it hadn't been enough. I want you out of my room, she said, voice flat. Not until you answer my questions. Get out. Or what? Davos smiled. You'll call for help? From who? The king? He laughed, low and humorless. He won't protect you, not once the pack finds out what you are. What I am? A liar. A threat. His eyes narrowed. Maybe a spy. The accusation hit like a fist. You're insane, Mara said. Am I? You show up out of nowhere, take a contract no one else wanted, refuse to leave, and now you're hiding something that's making you sick. He stepped back, straightening. I'll be watching you, closely. And the moment you slip, Davos, the voice came from the doorway. Kale stood there, expression unreadable. We're done here, he said quietly. Davos didn't move. We're not. Yes, we are. The air in the room changed. Tension pulled taut, sharp enough to cut. Davos stared at Kyle for a long moment. Then slowly, he inclined his head. As you say, my king. He walked out. Kyle waited until his footsteps faded, then turned to Mara. Are you all right? No. What did he say? Everything. Her voice cracked. He knows. Or he thinks he knows. Either way, it's the same. Kyle's jaw tightened. Did you tell him the truth? Of course not. Good. Don't. He's going to keep digging. I know. And when he finds proof, he won't. You can't know that. Yes, I can. Kale crossed the room, stopping in front of her. Because I'm going to make sure he doesn't. Mara looked up at him. How? Leave that to me. Kyle, I said leave it to me. His voice softened. You finish the cloaks. I'll handle Davos. Why? The question came out raw. Why are you protecting me? He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost uncertain. Because if what you're carrying is what I think it is, then everything I've been told about my bloodline is a lie. He met her eyes. And if it's true, then you're the proof. Mara didn't see Davos for 3 days. She didn't see much of anyone. Kyle had given orders. She didn't know what kind, but the result was clear. No one came to her room. No one asked questions. Even the servants who brought her meals did so in silence, eyes averted. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like the calm before a storm. She finished the 6th cloak on the 10th day, started the 7th immediately after. Her hands moved through the patterns with mechanical precision, but her mind was elsewhere. On Davos. On Kael. On the impossible thing growing inside her that no one was supposed to know about. She was so focused on her thoughts that she didn't hear the door open. "You're working too late." Mara's head snapped up. Kael stood in the doorway, arms crossed, backlit by the hall torches. "I didn't hear you knock," she said. "I didn't." "That's rude." "So is ignoring your health." Mara set down her needle. "What do you want?" "To talk." "We've done enough of that." "Not about this." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Davos is asking questions, not just to me, to the Pack Council." Her stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "About you. About why I'm keeping an outsider here longer than necessary. About what you might be hiding." "What did you tell them?" "That you're finishing a commission and they need to mind their own business." He paused. They didn't like that answer. I'm sure they didn't. "Mara, listen to me." Kael's expression was serious. "The council has influence. If they decide you're a threat, I can only protect you so far." "Then don't protect me. Let me finish and leave." "You can't." "Why not?" "Because if you leave now, they'll assume you're running. That'll confirm Davos's suspicions. And if I stay, then we have time to figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out." Mara stood, exhaustion making her movement slow. "I finish the last cloak. You pay me. I disappear. That's the agreement." "The agreement's changed. You don't get to change it." "I just did." Her hands curled into fists. "You can't keep me here." "I can, and I will." Kael's voice was firm. "Not as a prisoner, as someone under my protection." "I don't want your protection." "Too bad. You have it." Mara stared at him, anger and fear and something else she couldn't name tangling in her chest. "Why?" she asked again. "Why do you care?" Kael was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Because 20 years ago my father was told his line was cursed, that no heir of his blood would ever be born, that I would be the last." His eyes met hers, and I've spent my entire life believing that. The weight of those words settled between them. "If what you're carrying is mine," he continued quietly, "then everything I've built my life around is wrong, and I need to know the truth." Mara's breath caught. "It's not yours," she said. "I told you I haven't been with anyone." "I know." "Then how—" "I don't know." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding through. "But I felt it. When I touched your wrist, there's a bond there. Faint, almost invisible, but it's there." "That's impossible." "So is what's happening to you." She had no answer for that. Kael stepped closer. "Let me help you, please." The word please sounded wrong coming from him. Too vulnerable, too human. Mara wanted to say no, wanted to push him away, finish the work, and run before this place swallowed her whole. But she was so tired and so scared. "What do you want me to do?" she asked quietly. "Trust me." "I don't trust anyone." "Then start now." She looked at him, really looked, past the authority and the cold control to the uncertainty underneath. He didn't have answers either, but he was trying. That had to count for something. "All right," she said finally. "But if this goes wrong, it won't." "You don't know that." "No," Kael admitted. "But I'm going to make sure it doesn't anyway." The next morning, everything changed. Mara woke to shouting. She threw on her cloak and stepped into the hall. A crowd had gathered near the great hall. Servants, guards, pack members, all talking at once. She pushed through until she could see what they were looking at. Davos. He was on the floor, unconscious, blood trailing from his temple. "What happened?" someone shouted. "He fell," a guard said, but his voice was uncertain. "Fell." Sarah pushed forward, eyes sharp. From where? No one answered. Mara's gaze swept the crowd and stopped. Kale stood at the back, expression unreadable. Their eyes met. And she knew. He hadn't just protected her, he'd removed the threat. The crowd parted as a healer knelt beside Davos, checking his pulse. He's alive, the healer announced, but he'll need time to recover. Murmurs rippled through the group. Mara stayed frozen, pulse hammering. Kale moved through the crowd, stopping beside Davos. Get him to the infirmary, he ordered, and double the watch on the east wing. Someone will answer for this. It was a performance. A good one. But Mara saw the truth underneath. The power had shifted, and she was standing on the wrong side of it. Mara turned and walked back to her room before anyone could see her face. Her hands didn't start shaking until she'd closed the door. She stood there, back pressed against the wood, breathing too fast. The image of Davos on the floor played behind her eyes. The blood, the stillness, the way no one had asked the right questions. He'll need time to recover. Time Kyle had just bought her. But at what cost? She moved to the window, stared out at nothing. The courtyard below was empty now. The crowd dispersed. Snow had started falling again, thick and silent. Somewhere in this hold, a man lay unconscious because he'd gotten too close to the truth, and she was the reason why. Mara pressed her forehead against the cold glass. This wasn't survival anymore. This was something darker, something she didn't know how to navigate. A knock made her turn. It's me, Kyle's voice said through the door. She didn't move. Go away. Open the door. No. A pause. Then, I'm not leaving until you let me in. Mara's jaw tightened. She crossed the room and yanked the door open. What did you do? She demanded. Kyle stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His expression was calm, too calm. I handled a problem. You didn't handle it. You attacked him. I removed a threat. He's your advisor. He was my advisor. Kale's voice was flat. Now he's someone who knows too much and asks too many questions. So you what? Threw him down the stairs? I didn't throw him anywhere. He met her eyes. He fell. The lie was so smooth it almost sounded true. Mara laughed, sharp and bitter. You think I'm stupid? I think you're scared. Of course I'm scared. You just... She stopped, forcing herself to lower her voice. You can't just hurt people who inconvenience you. I didn't hurt him. I stopped him from hurting you. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? Kyle stepped closer. He was going to expose you, drag you in front of the council, force you to explain something you can't explain. And then what? You think they'd just let you walk away? I don't know. I do. His voice went cold. They'd call you a liar, a witch, a threat to the pack's stability. And then they'd kill you. The words landed like stones. Mara stared at him. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I've seen it happen. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. 3 years ago, a woman claimed she was carrying a pack member's child. He denied it. The council believed him. She was found in the river 2 weeks later. Silence filled the room. They ruled it an accident, Kyle continued quietly. But everyone knew the truth. Mara's stomach turned. And you did nothing? I wasn't king yet. He looked back at her. But I am now, and I won't let that happen to you. So instead, you'll make yourself a killer? I already am one. He said it without emotion. I've held this place together with blood and force for 6 years. One more body doesn't change anything. He's not dead. Not yet. The cold certainty in his voice made her skin crawl. What happens when he wakes up? Mara asked. He won't remember what happened. Head injuries do that. And if he does? Then I'll deal with it. Meaning what? Kyle didn't answer. Mara turned away, pressing her hands against the table. The half-finished cloak lay there, perfect stitching stark against dark leather. I should never have come here, she said quietly. But you did. I should leave. You can't. Stop saying that. She spun to face him. You don't own me. You don't get to decide what I do. No, but I get to decide who stays in my hold. His expression didn't shift. And you're staying. Why? Because you think I'm carrying some miracle child that'll save your bloodline? Her voice cracked. I don't even know if that's true. For all we know, this is, I don't know, something else entirely. A sickness, a mistake. It's not a mistake. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He moved closer, stopping just out of reach. I can feel it, Mara. The bond. It's faint, but it's there, and it's getting stronger. That's impossible. So you keep saying. His eyes searched hers. But here we are anyway. She wanted to argue, wanted to push him away, deny everything, run until her legs gave out. But she was so tired of running. What do you want from me? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. The truth. I've already told you, not about what happened, about what you want. He paused. Do you want to keep it? The question hit harder than she expected. Mara's hand moved to her stomach before she could stop it. I don't know, she admitted. That's fair. Is it? She laughed, hollow. Because it feels like the worst possible answer. It's honest. That's enough. Silence stretched between them. Then Kael said, If you decide you want to leave after the last cloak is done, I won't stop you. I'll pay you, give you enough silver to disappear, and no one will follow. And if I stay, then I protect you, both of you, no matter what it costs. Mara studied his face, looking for the lie. She didn't find one. Why would you do that? She asked. Because I've spent 6 years being told I'm the end of something. His voice was rough. If there's even a chance that's wrong, I have to know. Even if it destroys you? Even then. The weight of his certainty settled over her like snow. Mara looked away first. I need to finish the last cloak. I know. And I need you to leave me alone while I do it. Kael nodded once. All right. He left without another word. Mara stood there for a long time after he was gone, staring at the door. Then she sat down and went back to work. The next 5 days were the quietest the hold had been since she'd arrived. Davos remained unconscious in the infirmary. The council met twice, but Kael didn't attend either session. Rumors circulated. Some said the advisor had been drunk. Others claimed it was an attack. A few whispered darker theories. No one mentioned Mara's name. She worked from dawn to midnight, hands moving through the final cloak with mechanical precision. The stitching was perfect, the reinforcement flawless. The dye work took 3 attempts, but the 4th came out exactly right. On the 6th day, she finished. She held the last cloak up to the light, checking every seam, every join. Nothing was out of place. Nothing weak. 7 cloaks. Battle grade. Exactly as promised. She set it down with the others and sat back, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. It was done. She'd survived. Now she just had to decide what came next. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called, too tired to care who it was. Sarah stepped inside, carrying a tray of food. You've been hiding, she said without preamble. I've been working. Same thing. Sarah set the tray down. Eat. Mara looked at the bread, cheese, dried fruit. Her stomach turned. I'm not hungry. Don't care. Eat anyway. Sarah, eat, or I'll sit here and watch you until you do. Mara sighed and picked up a piece of bread. It tasted like ash, but she forced it down. Sarah watched her with sharp eyes. You look terrible. Thanks. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept more than 3 hours? I don't remember. That's what I thought. Sarah leaned against the table. You finished the cloaks? Yeah. So you'll be leaving soon. It wasn't a question. Mara didn't answer. Sarah's expression softened. Whatever you're running from, you know it'll still be there when you leave, right? I'm not running from anything. And everyone's running from something. Sarah crossed her arms. The question is whether you're running toward something better or just running. When did you become a philosopher? When I started watching people destroy themselves. Sarah's tone was matter-of-fact. You're not the first outsider who came here desperate, but you might be the first one Kael actually gives a damn about. Mara's pulse jumped. He doesn't. Yes, he does. Sarah cut her off. I've known him for 8 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. You're imagining things. Am I? Sarah smiled slightly. He put Davos in the infirmary for you. That's not nothing. He didn't do that for me. Keep telling yourself that. Sarah pushed off the table and headed for the door. She paused with her hand on the latch. Whatever you decide, she said quietly, make sure it's what you want. Not what you think you should want. Not what's safest. What you actually want. Then she was gone. Mara sat there staring at the half-eaten bread. What do I want? She didn't know. But for the first time in weeks, she let herself ask the question. That night, the council called a meeting. Mara heard about it from Elin, who appeared at her door just after sundown. You need to come with me, Elin said, voice tight. Where? Great Hall, now. Why? Because they're calling you in front of the council. Mara's blood went cold. What? Davos woke up an hour ago. He's talking. Elin grabbed her arm. And he's asking for you. No time to think. No time to plan. Mara followed Elin through the corridors, heart hammering against her ribs. The great hall was packed. Every seat filled, people standing along the walls. At the head table sat 5 members of the council, 4 men, 1 woman, all of them older, all of them watching her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. Kael stood off to the side, arms crossed. His face was unreadable. Davos sat at the far end, head bandaged, eyes sharp despite the pallor of his skin. Mara Valen, the woman at the center said. Her voice carried authority. Step forward. Mara did, forcing herself to walk steady. You've been accused of withholding information relevant to the Pack's security, the woman continued. Do you understand the charge? I understand the words. I don't understand the charge. A murmur ran through the crowd. Then let me clarify. The woman gestured to Davos. Our advisor claims you're hiding a pregnancy. Is this true? Every eye in the room fixed on her. Mara's mind raced. She could lie, deny it, buy herself time. But time for what? She looked at Kael. He met her gaze, expression still unreadable. Then she looked at Davos, who was watching her like a wolf watching prey. And she made a choice. Yes, she said clearly. It's true. The hall erupted. Shouts, questions, accusations flying faster than she could track. The woman at the center slammed her hand on the table. Silence! The noise died down. Who is the father? The woman demanded. Mara's throat went dry. This was it, the moment everything collapsed. She could lie. Say it was someone from outside the hold, someone far away, but they'd ask for proof. They'd dig. And eventually, they'd find the truth anyway. Or she could tell them the truth now, on her terms. She lifted her chin. I don't know, she said. Silence. Then Davos laughed, sharp and cruel. You expect us to believe that? I don't expect you to believe anything, but it's the truth. You're either lying or you're a... He stopped, but the word hung in the air anyway. Whore. Mara's hands curled into fists. I haven't been with anyone, she said, voice steady. Not in over a year, not here, not anywhere. Then how? I don't know. She looked at the council, meeting each of their eyes in turn. I don't have an explanation. I don't have proof. All I have is what's happening to my body, and I can't explain it any more than you can. The woman leaned forward. You understand how this sounds. I understand that it sounds impossible. It is impossible. And yet here we are. If you're lying, I'm not. Then prove it. Mara's stomach dropped. How? Let our healer examine you, confirm the pregnancy, confirm there's no evidence of recent activity. Heat crawled up her neck. That's invasive. It's necessary. It's humiliating. It's the only way we'll believe you. The woman's tone was firm. Unless you have a better suggestion. Mara looked at Kael again. He stepped forward. She doesn't need to prove anything, he said quietly. The hall went silent. Excuse me? The woman said. You heard me. Kael's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. She doesn't owe you proof. She doesn't owe you an explanation. She's here on a contract, not a trial. She's carrying a child under our roof, Davos cut in. That makes it our business. No, it doesn't. My king, I'm not finished. Kael's gaze swept the room. Mara Valen came here to do a job. She's done it. 7 cloaks, exactly as commissioned. What happens to her after she leaves is none of your concern. And if she's carrying a wolf's child, the woman asked, then that's between her and whoever the father is. We have a right to know, Sin. You have a right to nothing. Kale's voice cut through the room like a blade. I'm the king. I make the rules, and I'm telling you to drop this. Davos stood, wincing. This is exactly what I warned you about. She's compromised your judgment. Sit down. You're protecting her for a reason, and I think we all know what that reason is. The implication hit the room like a thunderclap. Kyle went very still. Say that again, he said softly. Davos met his eyes. You're protecting her because you think the child is yours. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mara's heart stopped. Kale stared at Davos for a long, terrible moment. Then he said, You're right. The hall exploded. Shouts, denials, accusations. The noise was deafening. Mara stood frozen, unable to process what she'd just heard. You're right. He'd just claimed it, in front of everyone. The woman at the council table stood. That's impossible. You can't have children. Clearly, I was told wrong. You can't know. I know what I know. Kale's voice was firm. And I'm telling you now, the child is mine. Mara is under my protection, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me. Directly. The threat was unmistakable. Davos's face went white. You're lying. You're covering for her. I'm done with you. Kyle turned to the guards. Remove him from the council, effective immediately. You can't. I just did. 2 guards moved forward, flanking Davos. He looked at the council, at the crowd, searching for support. No one moved. This isn't over, Davos said, voice shaking with rage. Yes, Kyle said quietly. It is. The guards escorted him out. Silence fell over the hall. Kyle turned to Mara. Their eyes met, and she saw the truth there. He'd just sacrificed everything to protect her, his reputation, his authority, his control over the council. All of it. For her. The woman at the council table cleared her throat. If what you claim is true, my king, then this changes everything. I know. The pack will have questions. They can ask them. And if the child... She hesitated. If it's born and it's not what you claim, then I'll deal with the consequences. Kale's tone was final. But until then, this conversation is over. He turned and walked out of the hall. Mara stood there, legs shaking, unable to move. The crowd began to disperse, voices rising in heated discussion. Sarah appeared at her side. Come on, let's get you out of here. Mara let herself be led away, mind spinning. He claimed it. He claimed me. The implications crashed over her like a wave. This wasn't protection anymore. This was ownership. And she didn't know if she'd just been saved or condemned. She found him in the armory. He was alone, standing in front of a rack of swords, staring at nothing. What did you just do? Mara demanded. Kale didn't turn. What I had to. You lied to the entire pack. I told them the truth. No, you didn't. You don't know if... I know enough. He turned to face her. The bond is there, Mara. Faint, yes. But it exists. And that means the child is mine in every way that matters. That's not how this works. Isn't it? He stepped closer. You're carrying a life that shouldn't exist. A life that's connected to me in a way I can't explain. What would you call that? A mistake. I don't believe that. Then you're a fool. Probably. His expression softened. But I'm a fool who just staked everything on you being worth it. The weight of those words settled between them. I didn't ask you to do that, Mara said quietly. I know. I didn't ask for any of this. I know that too. Then why Because I'm tired of living like the world's already decided I'm finished. His voice was rough. For 6 years I've ruled this place knowing I'd be the last, that everything I built would die with me. And I accepted that. But now, he stopped. Now there's a chance I was wrong, and I can't let that go. Even if it destroys you? Even then. Mara stared at him, something hot and sharp rising in her chest. Anger, fear, gratitude. She didn't know which. What happens now? She asked. Now I pay you. You take the silver, and you decide what you want to do. You said I couldn't leave. I changed my mind. He met her eyes. Stay or go. It's your choice. But if you stay, you're not just a contractor anymore. You're under the Pact's protection, mine specifically, and that comes with consequences. Like what? Like people watching you, judging you, waiting to see if I was right to claim you. And if they decide I'm lying, then they'll have to go through me to do anything about it. The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it was terrifying, because it meant he was serious. He'd already burned his advisor, already defied his counsel, already upended the entire Pact's understanding of what was possible, all for her. I need time to think, Mara said. Take it. She turned to leave. Mara. She stopped. Whatever you decide, Kael said quietly. I meant what I said. You're worth it. She didn't trust herself to answer, so she left. Quotes. She didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, watching snow fall over the courtyard, replaying everything that had happened. Kael's claim, the council's reaction, Davos's removal, the way the entire hold had shifted in the span of an hour. By dawn, she'd made her decision. She packed her tools carefully, wrapped the silver Kael had sent to her room, and prepared to leave. But when she opened the door, someone was waiting. An old woman, hunched, gray-haired, leaning on a walking stick. She looked at Mara with eyes that had seen too much. You're leaving, the woman said. Not a question. Yes. Don't, Mara frowned. Why not? The woman reached out, gnarled fingers brushing Mara's stomach. Her expression changed. Because that child is the first true heir this line has seen in 50 years. Her voice was quiet, certain. And if you run now, you'll doom us all. Mara's breath caught. How do you... I was there when the curse was spoken. The woman's eyes were sharp. I watched it take root, and I've been waiting 20 years for it to break. What curse? The old woman smiled, sad and knowing. The one that said no alpha's son would ever father a child. The one that was supposed to end this bloodline forever. She squeezed Mara's hand. But curses have loopholes. And you, girl, are the loophole no one saw coming. Mara stared at the old woman's hand on her stomach, mind reeling. What are you talking about? She managed. The woman withdrew her hand slowly, leaning heavier on her walking stick. May I come in? Every instinct screamed at Mara to say no, to shut the door, grab her things, and run. But the woman's eyes held something she hadn't seen since arriving at Frosthold. Understanding. Mara stepped back. The woman shuffled inside, moving with the careful precision of someone whose bones remembered younger days. She lowered herself onto the chair by the brazier without asking permission. My name is Rena, she said. I was midwife here before you were born. Before your mother was born, probably. I don't understand what that has to do with everything. Rena's gaze was steady. Sit down, child. You look ready to collapse. Mara remained standing. You said something about a curse. I did. Curses aren't real. Tell that to the 3 generations of Draven Alphas who died without heirs. Rena's tone was matter of fact. Tell that to the 6 stillborn children buried in the northern grove. Tell that to Kael's father, who was promised a legacy and got nothing but an empty line. Mara's throat tightened. That's just bad luck. Biology. Is it? Rena tilted her head. Then explain what's growing inside you. I can't. Exactly. The old woman folded her hands in her lap. 53 years ago, a seer came to this hold. She'd been wronged by Kael's grandfather. Details don't matter now. What matters is what she said before they drove her out. Mara didn't want to hear this, didn't want to believe it, but she sat down anyway. She cursed the bloodline, Rena continued. Said no alpha's son would father a living child. That the line would die with the next generation. Most people thought it was just angry words. But then Kael's grandfather's wife lost 3 pregnancies in a row. His brother's wife lost 2. And when Kael's father finally had a son who survived birth, everyone thought the curse had broken. But it hadn't. No, it just waited. Rena's expression was grave. Kael grew up strong, healthy. Everything an alpha should be. But when he came of age, nothing happened. No bond, no children, not for lack of trying. Mara's cheeks burned. That's not... I don't need to know. Yes, you do. Because you need to understand what you are. Rena leaned forward. The curse said no alpha's son would father a child. But you're not bonded to him. You never touched him. By every law of nature and magic, this shouldn't exist. Then how? Because curses have rules, and sometimes those rules have gaps. Rena's eyes glinted. The seer was specific. Alpha's son. She didn't account for the possibility of a child conceived without touch, without claiming, without any of the traditional bonds that make a pack heir. Mara's head spun. That's insane. Is it more insane than what's already happened to you? She had no answer for that. I don't believe in magic, Mara said finally. You don't have to believe in it for it to be real. Rena stood, slower this time. The child inside you exists outside the curse's parameters. That makes it the first true heir this line has seen in half a century. I'm not even pack. Doesn't matter. The blood recognizes itself. Rena moved toward the door, then paused. If you leave now, the curse wins. The line dies. And everything Kael's fought to protect collapses within a generation. That's not my responsibility. No, but it's your choice. The old woman's voice softened. You can run, take the silver, disappear, raise the child somewhere far from here. Or you can stay and see what happens when the impossible becomes real. She left before Mara could respond. The room felt too quiet after she was gone. Mara sat there, hands shaking, staring at her packed belongings. The first true heir this line has seen in 50 years. If Rena was right, if any of this was true, then leaving didn't just mean saving herself. It meant condemning an entire bloodline. She pressed her hands against her face and tried to think. Her father's debt was paid. Kael had sent enough silver to clear it twice over. She had no reason to stay, no obligation, except the weight of a curse she didn't believe in and a child she didn't understand. Dawn light crept through the window. Mara looked at her satchel, at the tools she'd packed so carefully. Then she unpacked them, one by one, and set them back on the table. She wasn't leaving, not yet. Word spread faster than fire through dry timber. By midday, everyone in the hold knew the outsider had chosen to stay. Mara felt their eyes on her as she walked through the corridors. Servants who'd ignored her before now watched with open curiosity. Guards assessed her differently. Even the wolves in the courtyard seemed to track her movements with new interest. She kept her head up and kept walking. Elin found her near the kitchens. You're staying. Looks like it. Why? Mara didn't have a good answer. Unfinished business. Elin studied her for a long moment, then nodded. You'll need better quarters. The East Wing room was meant for temporary contractors. I'm fine where I am. No, you're not. You're under the king's protection now. That means you're pack adjacent, whether you like it or not. Elin's tone was brisk. I'll have your things moved to the South Wing by tonight. I didn't agree to. Wasn't asking. Elin walked away before Mara could argue. By evening, Mara's belongings had been relocated to a room twice the size of her previous one. It had a real bed, a larger brazier, a window that overlooked the forest instead of the courtyard, and furniture that looked like it had been built with care instead of necessity. Someone had even left fresh linens and a basin of clean water. Mara stood in the doorway, unsure whether to be grateful or unsettled. A knock made her turn. Kael stood in the hall, expression unreadable. May I come in? It's your hold. It's your room. Fair enough. She stepped back. He entered, closing the door behind him. You stayed, he said. I did. Why? Mara crossed her arms. An old woman told me I'm the answer to a 50-year-old curse. Seemed rude to leave after that. Kael's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Rena got to you. Is what she said true? About the curse? He moved to the window, looking out at the darkening trees. My father believed it was. So did his father. Whether it's real or just a string of terrible luck, I don't know, but the result's the same either way. No heirs. Until now. He turned back to face her. If what you're carrying survives. The if hung heavy between them. What happens if it doesn't? Mara asked quietly. Then nothing changes. The line still ends with me. And if it does? Then everything changes. His voice was steady. The pack will have a future. The hold will have stability. And you... He stopped. What about me? You'll be tied to this place for the rest of your life. The bluntness of it struck harder than she expected. Because of the child, she said, because you'll be the mother of the next alpha. Kale's eyes met hers. That's not a small thing, Mara. That's a permanent bond, one you can't walk away from. Even if I wanted to. Even then, Mara turned away, pulse hammering. You should have let me leave. Probably, but I didn't. Why not? Because I'm selfish. He said it without apology. And because I think... He stopped. I think you're stronger than you believe you are. She laughed, sharp and bitter. I'm terrified. Good. That means you're paying attention. How is that good? Because fear keeps you smart, keeps you careful. He stepped closer. And you're going to need both in the coming weeks. Mara looked at him. What aren't you telling me? The council accepted my claim. But acceptance isn't the same as belief. His expression was grim. Davos is gone, but his allies aren't. They're watching, waiting to see if I was right to stake everything on you. And if they decide I'm a liar, then we deal with it. How? However we have to. The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt like a warning. The next morning, Sarah appeared with breakfast and a proposition. You need to be seen, she said, setting down a tray of bread, cheese, and something that smelled like roasted meat. Mara's stomach turned. Seen doing what? Being part of the hold, eating in the Great Hall, walking the grounds, talking to people. Sarah sat down across from her. Right now, you're a mystery. Mysteries make people nervous. I don't care what makes them nervous. You should, because nervous people do stupid things. Sarah's tone was practical. If you want them to accept you, you need to stop hiding. I'm not hiding. You've left this room 3 times in 2 days. That's hiding. Mara picked at the bread. What if I don't want to be accepted? Then you should have left when you had the chance. Sarah's gaze was direct. You stayed. That means you're choosing this. And if you're choosing this, you need to commit. I don't know how to be pack. No one's asking you to be pack. Just be present. Sarah stood. Start small. Come to the evening meal tonight. Sit. Eat. Let people see you're not afraid of them. I am afraid of them. Then fake it. Sarah headed for the door. I'll come get you at sunset. She left before Mara could refuse. Mara sat there, staring at the food she couldn't bring herself to eat. Let people see you're not afraid. She'd spent her whole life trying not to be seen. Now she was supposed to walk into a room full of wolves and pretend she belonged. The thought made her want to be sick, but Sarah was right. She'd made a choice. And choices had consequences. The Great Hall that evening was packed. Mara stood in the doorway, Sarah at her side, and felt every eye turn toward her. Don't stop, Sarah murmured. Keep walking. Mara forced her legs to move. They crossed the hall to a table near the center. Sarah sat. Mara followed, hands trembling under the table where no one could see. Plates appeared. Conversation resumed around them, but the attention didn't fade. It just became quieter, more watchful. Torrin sat down across from them without asking. You're back. I am, Mara said. Why? That seems to be everyone's favorite question. Because no one understands the answer. His expression was neutral. You had an out. Most people would have taken it. I'm not most people. Clearly, he cut into his meat with methodical precision. The council's not happy. I noticed. They think you're manipulating the king. Mara's jaw tightened. I'm not manipulating anyone. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what they believe. Torrin's eyes were sharp. And right now, they believe you're either the answer to a dead bloodline or the biggest threat this hold has seen in a decade. Which do you believe? I believe Kael's not stupid, and if he's willing to risk everything on you, there's a reason. He paused. But that doesn't mean the others will come around. What do I have to do to convince them? Survive. Torrin's tone was blunt. Long enough for them to see you're not going anywhere. Long enough for that child to be born. Long enough to prove Kyle wasn't wrong. And if I can't? Then you won't have to worry about the council. Nature will handle it for them. The words settled over her like ice water. Sarah shot Torrin a glare. You're not helping. Wasn't trying to. He stood. Just being honest. He walked away. Mara stared at her plate, appetite gone. Don't listen to him, Sarah said quietly. Why not? He's right. He's practical. That's not the same thing. Sarah leaned in. You want to know what I think? Not really. Too bad. I think you're braver than anyone here gives you credit for, including yourself. Sarah's voice was firm. And I think if anyone can pull off the impossible, it's you. Why would you think that? Because you're still here, despite everything, despite the fear and the suspicion and the fact that you have no idea what you're doing. Sarah smiled slightly. That's not weakness. That's strength. Mara looked at her, something tight loosening in her chest. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. You're still going to have to eat that meat, and it's getting cold. Mara laughed despite herself. It felt strange, foreign, but not bad. Autumn. 3 days later, the debt collectors came. Mara was in the courtyard, watching a weapons drill, when Elin found her. You have visitors, Elin said, voice tight. Who? 2 men, claiming you owe them money. Mara's blood went cold. Where are they? Main gate. Kyle's with them. She ran. The main gate was open, snow blowing through in gusts. Kyle stood just inside, arms crossed, facing 2 men Mara recognized immediately. Herrick and Voss, her father's creditors. Herrick saw her first. His smile was all teeth. There she is. What are you doing here? Mara demanded. Collecting. Voss stepped forward, eyes cold. Your contract said 7 weeks. It's been 9. Debt's back in effect. I paid it. The king paid it. You paid the principal, not the penalties for late payment. Herrick pulled out a folded paper. According to our agreement, every week past the deadline adds 20% interest. You're now 3 weeks late. Mara's stomach dropped. That wasn't in the contract. Read the fine print, sweetheart. Voss's smile was cruel. You owe us 400 silver now, plus the 2 weeks we spent tracking you down. Call it 500 even. I don't have 500 silver. That's unfortunate. Herrick looked past her at the hold. But I'm sure we can work something out. Nice place like this, they must have valuables. You're not taking anything from here, Kyle said quietly. Both men turned to look at him. This doesn't concern you, Herrick said. She's under my protection. That makes it my concern. Protection doesn't pay debts. How much? Kyle asked. 500, like I said. You'll have it by tomorrow. Mara spun to face him. No, you already paid once, and I'll pay again. Kyle's tone left no room for argument. You're not going with them. We don't need her, Voss said. Just the silver. Then you'll get it. Tomorrow. Now leave. Herrick's eyes narrowed. You're awful protective of a contractor. That's not your concern either. Maybe it is. Voss stepped closer to Mara, studying her face. You look different. Softer. Like you've been eating well. Mara's pulse spiked. Interesting, Voss continued. Woman runs from a debt, hides in a wolf hold, and suddenly the king's paying her bills. His gaze dropped to her stomach. Makes a man wonder what services she's been providing. Kale moved faster than Mara could track. One moment he was standing still. The next, Voss was on the ground, Kale's hand wrapped around his throat. Say that again, Kale said, voice deadly soft. Voss choked, clawing at Kale's grip. Herrick reached for a knife. 3 guards materialized from the shadows, weapons drawn. Don't, Torrin said from behind Herrick. Herrick froze. Kale released Voss, who scrambled backward, gasping. You'll have your silver tomorrow, Kale repeated, and then you'll leave. If I see either of you near this hold again, you won't leave alive. Understand? Voss nodded, still coughing. Herrick stared at Kyle, jaw tight. Then he grabbed Voss by the arm and hauled him to his feet. Tomorrow, Herrick said. They left. Kale watched until they disappeared into the trees, then turned to Mara. Are you all right? You shouldn't have done that. They were threatening you. They were doing their job. Oh, their job doesn't include insulting you under my roof. His expression was hard. And it definitely doesn't include implying you're... He stopped. They got off easy. You're going to pay them 500 silver. Yes. That's too much. I don't care. Kyle, this isn't up for debate. He stepped closer, voice lowering. You're under my protection. That means your debts are my debts. Your problems are my problems. And your enemies are my enemies. I don't need you to fight my battles. Too bad. I'm doing it anyway. Mara stared at him, frustration and gratitude tangling in her chest. Why? She asked. Why does it matter this much? Kale was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Because you matter. The words hit harder than they should have. I'm nobody, Mara said. You're carrying the future of my bloodline. His eyes met hers. That makes you the most important person in this hold. Even more than you? Especially more than me. The certainty in his voice left no room for argument. Mara looked away first. I'll pay you back. No, you won't. Kyle, consider it an investment. He turned toward the hold. Come on, you're freezing. She was. She followed him inside, mind spinning. 500 silver, gone. Just like that. Because of her. She'd thought staying would protect her. Instead, it had just made her debt grow. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Voss's words. Makes a man wonder what services she's been providing. The implication was clear, and if he'd thought it, others would too. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It's me, Sarah's voice said. Mara got up and opened it. Sarah stepped inside, carrying 2 mugs. Thought you could use this. What is it? Tea, with something stronger in it. Sarah handed her a mug and sat on the edge of the bed. I heard about the collectors. Of course you did. Word travels. Sarah took a sip. You okay? Define okay. Fair point. Sarah was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I don't think anyone believes what that bastard implied. Don't they? No. They think you're strange, maybe dangerous, definitely complicated. Sarah smiled slightly. But not a whore. You're too stubborn for that. Despite everything, Mara laughed. Thanks, I think. You're welcome. Sarah's expression turned serious. But you need to know, people are talking. About you. About the king. About what happens if the child is born, and it's not what he claims. I know. Do you? Sarah leaned forward. Because if this goes wrong, it won't just be you who pays the price. It'll be Kyle, too, and he's risked too much already. I didn't ask him to... Doesn't matter, he did it anyway. Sarah's gaze was steady. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? Mara set down her mug. What can I do? Prove him right. Show them the child is worth protecting, that you're worth protecting. How? By surviving, by being present, by not running when things get hard. Sarah stood. You've already started. Keep going. She left, taking the mugs with her. Mara sat there in the dark, Sarah's words echoing in her mind. Prove him right. She'd spent so long trying to stay invisible. Now she had to do the opposite. And she had no idea how. The shift happened slowly. Over the next 2 weeks, Mara forced herself into spaces she'd avoided. The Great Hall, the training yard, the market square where pack members gathered to trade and gossip. At first, people stared, whispered, kept their distance. But she kept showing up. And slowly, so slowly she almost missed it, they started to adjust. A woman in the kitchens asked her opinion on spices. A young guard nodded to her in passing. A child ran past her in the corridor and didn't flinch when she smiled. Small things, nothing earth-shattering, but they added up. One afternoon, Rena appeared while Mara was walking the outer wall. You're looking better, the old woman said. Am I? Steadier, less like you're about to bolt. Rena fell into step beside her. The hold's noticing. I doubt that. Don't. Rena's tone was firm. People see more than you think, and they're starting to see you as someone who belongs here. I'm not pack. Not yet. But you're becoming something close to it. Rena glanced at her. How are you feeling, physically? Tired, nauseous, sore. Normal then, Rena nodded. The worst should pass soon. Second trimester's usually easier. Mara stopped walking. You sound very sure of that. I've delivered over 300 children in my life. I know what I'm talking about. Rena's eyes were kind. You're doing well, child. Better than most in your position would. My position being impossible? Your position being unprecedented. Rena smiled. There's a difference. They walked in silence for a while. Then Rena said, The king watches you. Mara's pulse jumped. What? When you're in the Great Hall, when you're walking the grounds. He watches. Rena's expression was unreadable. Not like a guard watching a prisoner, like a man watching something he's afraid to lose. I'm not judging, just observing. Rena stopped at the top of the wall stairs. Be careful with his heart, Mara. He's given you more power than you realize. I don't want power. Then you're the first person in history to say that and mean it. Rena patted her arm. But whether you want it or not, you have it. Use it wisely. She descended the stairs, leaving Mara alone on the wall. The wind cut through her cloak, sharp and cold. Below, the hold spread out like a living thing, smoke rising from chimneys, people moving through the courtyards, wolves patrolling the perimeter. It looked permanent, established, like it would last forever. But Mara knew better. Nothing lasted forever, especially not things built on impossible foundations. She turned and headed back inside, the weight of Rena's words following her like a shadow. The council called another meeting 4 weeks after Mara had decided to stay. This time, she was invited. She stood in front of the same 5 members, Kael at her side, and waited. The woman at the center, Mara had learned her name was Thorn, studied her with sharp eyes. You've been here nearly 3 months now, Thorn said. I have. In that time, you've gone from contractor to something else. Thorn's tone was neutral. The king has claimed you, paid your debts, given you protection typically reserved for pack members. He has. And yet you're not pack, not bonded, not marked. Thorn leaned forward. Which raises the question, what exactly are you? Mara's throat was dry. I don't know how to answer that. Try. She glanced at Kael. He gave a small nod. Mara turned back to the council. I'm someone who came here to do a job and got caught up in something I don't understand, she said carefully. I'm someone carrying a child that shouldn't exist. And I'm someone who's chosen to stay and see what happens, even though I'm terrified. That's honest, at least. One of the men spoke up, gray-bearded, scarred. But honesty doesn't change the facts. You're an outsider. The child may or may not be what the king claims. And if it's not, then I'll leave, Mara interrupted. The moment it's born, you'll know the truth. If it's not pack, I'll take it and go. You'll never see me again. Silence. And if it is, Thorn asked, then I'll stay. And I'll do whatever I have to do to protect it. Whatever you have to do. Thorn's eyes narrowed. That's a dangerous promise. It's the only one I can make. The council members exchanged glances. Then Thorn said, The king has vouched for you. That carries weight, but it's not enough on its own. What do you need? Time? Proof. And your word that you won't disappear if things get difficult. You have it? Dewey. Thorn stood. Because running seems to be your first instinct. Mara's hands curled into fists. Not anymore. We'll see. Thorn's gaze swept over her. You're dismissed, but understand this. We're watching. And if you give us any reason to doubt the king's judgment, we won't hesitate to act. It was a threat wrapped in bureaucracy. Mara nodded once and left. Kael followed her out into the corridor. That went better than I expected, he said. Really? Because it felt like being put on trial. You were. But you survived. He caught her arm gently. And you didn't back down. That matters. To who? To them. To me. His voice softened. To everyone who's watching to see if you're strong enough for this. Mara pulled her arm free. I don't feel strong. No one does. Not really. Kael's expression was serious. But you keep showing up anyway. That's what strength is. She wanted to believe him. Instead, she just felt tired. I need to lie down, she said. Go. I'll make sure no one bothers you. She walked away without looking back. That night, alone in her room, Mara felt the first flutter of movement. Subtle, almost imaginary. But there. She pressed her hand against her stomach, breath catching. Real. It's real. For the first time since this had started, the child felt like more than an idea, more than a problem. It felt like a life. And Mara realized with startling clarity that she wanted it to survive. Not because of bloodlines or curses or pack politics, because it was hers. She sat there in the dark, hand on her stomach, and let herself feel the weight of that truth. When morning came, she got up and walked to the great hall without hesitation. People looked up when she entered. Conversation paused. Mara met their eyes, chin high, and kept walking. She sat. She ate. She stayed. And for the first time since arriving at Frosthold, she didn't feel like she was faking it. She belonged here, at least for now. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm Mara hadn't expected, wary acceptance punctuated by moments of surprising normalcy. She walked the hold each morning, nodding to people who no longer looked away. She ate in the great hall, listening to conversations she wasn't part of, but wasn't excluded from either. She existed in the space between outsider and insider, and somehow that felt right. The child grew. She felt it more each day, small movements that became stronger, more insistent, proof of something she still couldn't fully explain but had stopped trying to deny. Kyle kept his distance, but she felt his presence like a constant shadow, protective, watchful, never intrusive, but always there. It should have bothered her. It didn't. 2 months after the council meeting, Sarah found her in the library, a room Mara had discovered by accident and claimed as her own refuge. You look almost relaxed, Sarah said, dropping into the chair across from her. Don't get used to it. Wasn't planning to, Sarah grinned. How are you feeling? Heavy, tired, like I'm carrying a boulder. You kind of are. Sarah's expression softened. Rena says you're doing well, though. Better than expected. She tells you things? She tells everyone things. It's her job. Sarah leaned forward. There's something you should know. Mara set down the book she'd been pretending to read. What? Davos is back. Ice flooded her veins. What? He showed up at the gates this morning, demanded to speak with the council. Did they let him in? Not yet. Kael's handling it. Sarah's voice was tense. But he's claiming he has proof you're lying about everything. Mara's hands trembled. What kind of proof? No idea. But he's convinced enough people are listening that the council agreed to hear him out. When? Tomorrow. Dawn. Sarah's eyes were worried. Kael wants you to stay in your room until it's over. No. Mara, shh. I said no. She stood, ignoring the way her body protested the sudden movement. If Davos is going to accuse me, I'm going to face him. That's a terrible idea. Probably, but I'm done hiding. Sarah studied her for a long moment, then sighed. You're as stubborn as he is. Good. That wasn't a compliment. Mara headed for the door. I need to talk to Kael. She found him in the armory again, sharpening a blade with methodical precision. He looked up when she entered. You heard? Of course I heard. Everyone's heard. You're supposed to stay in your room. I'm not doing that. Kael set down the blade. Mara? No. Whatever Davos thinks he has, I'm facing it. She crossed her arms. I'm not letting him control this. This isn't about control, it's about keeping you safe. Safe from what? Words? She stepped closer. If he has proof I'm lying, then let him show it. And if he doesn't, then everyone needs to see that too. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Her voice was firm. You claim me. You told everyone this child is yours. If I hide now, it looks like we're both lying. Kael's jaw tightened. He could say things that hurt you. Let him. I've survived worse. Have you? The question stopped her. Kael moved closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You've been brave, he said quietly. Braver than anyone has a right to ask. But this is different. Davos isn't just going to question you. He's going to try to destroy you. Then he'll fail. You don't know that. Neither do you. She held his gaze. But I'm not running. Not from him. Not from this. Something shifted in Kael's expression. Resignation. Maybe respect. All right, he said finally, but you stay beside me the entire time, and if it gets dangerous, it won't. If it does, he continued, you let me handle it. Fine. I mean it, Mara. So do I. They stood there, too close, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between them. Then Kael stepped back. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. She nodded and left, pulse hammering. Tomorrow would prove everything, or destroy it. Dawn came cold and sharp. Mara dressed carefully, choosing the simplest tunic she owned. No adornment, no pretense, just herself. Sarah appeared at her door with bread and tea. You need to eat. I can't. Yes, you can. Sarah pushed the tray into her hands. You're going to need your strength. Mara forced down half the bread, her stomach churning with nerves. When the bells rang for assembly, she followed Sarah to the great hall. The room was packed, more people than she'd seen in one place since arriving. The council sat at the head table. Kael stood to the right, expression unreadable. And at the left, flanked by two men Mara didn't recognize, stood Davos. He looked thinner, harder. The bandage was gone from his head, but a scar remained, stark white against tanned skin. His eyes found hers immediately. The hatred there was undisguised. Mara lifted her chin and walked to Kael's side. He didn't look at her, but his hand brushed hers, brief, grounding. Thorn stood. This assembly has been called at the request of Davos Wren, former advisor to the king. He claims to have information relevant to the matter of Mara Valen and the child she carries. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Davos, speak, Thorn said. Davos stepped forward. Thank you, counselor. I'll be brief. His voice was calm, measured. 3 months ago, I expressed concerns about Mara Valen's presence in this hold. I questioned her story, her motives, and the claim that she carries the king's child. We're aware, Thorn said dryly. What you're not aware of is what I discovered during my recovery. Davos gestured to one of the men beside him. This is Henrik, a healer from the southern packs. I asked him to review everything we know about the Draven bloodline curse. Henrik stepped forward, nervous but determined. The curse placed on this line 53 years ago was specific. No alpha's son would father a living child. The magic was designed to prevent any direct male heir from continuing the bloodline. We know the history, another council member said impatiently. Then you know the curse doesn't account for female heirs, Henrik continued, or for children conceived outside traditional bonding. But there's something else. He paused. The curse also wouldn't recognize a child that wasn't actually blood-related to the line. The room went silent. Mara's pulse spiked. Davos smiled. Which brings us to the question no one's been brave enough to ask. If Mara Valen hasn't been with anyone, as she claims, then how exactly did she become pregnant? We've been through this, Kael said, voice hard. No, we've accepted a mystery without demanding answers. Davos turned to face the crowd. But I have an answer. One that makes far more sense than magic or miracles. Get to the point, Thorn said. She was already pregnant when she arrived. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Mara felt the room shift, attention sharpening, doubt creeping in. That's a lie, she said, voice steady despite the fear. Is it? Davos pulled out a folded paper. I tracked down the people you worked with before coming here. A seamstress in Greyhold. She remembers you leaving suddenly. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. I had a contract here. Convenient timing, though. Wouldn't you say? Davos unfolded the paper. And then there's this. A record from a healer in Greyhold, dated 2 weeks before you left. A woman matching your description came in asking about pregnancy symptoms. Mara's stomach dropped. That was true. She had gone to a healer, had asked questions, because she'd been terrified and confused and needed answers, but she hadn't been pregnant then. The symptoms had started after. That doesn't prove anything, Kael said. Doesn't it? Davos's smile widened. She knew she was pregnant before she came here. She saw an opportunity, a desperate king, a dying bloodline, and she took it. That's insane, Mara said. Is it? Or is it smart? Davos stepped closer. You needed money. The king needed an heir, so you created a story. Played the victim. Made yourself indispensable. And now you're living in comfort while the rest of us wonder if we've been played for fools. The crowd's murmur grew louder. Mara looked at the council, at the people watching, at the doubt spreading across their faces. She'd known this could happen, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. I didn't lie, she said, voice rising. I don't know how this happened. I don't know why. But I didn't come here pregnant. I didn't manipulate anyone. And I sure as hell didn't ask for any of this. Then explain the healer's record, Davos demanded. I can't, because I don't remember going to any healer in Greyhold. Convenient. It's the truth. Enough. Cale's voice cut through the noise like a blade. He turned to Henrik. You said the curse wouldn't recognize a child that wasn't blood-related to the line. How would you know if it was? Henrik hesitated. There are ways. Bloodline tests? They're old magic, but they work. Then test her. The hall went silent. Mara stared at Kael. What? Test the child, Kael repeated, looking at Henrik. If it's mine, the magic will recognize it. If it's not, we'll know. My king, Thorn said carefully, such tests are invasive and not without risk. I don't care about risk. I care about truth. Kael's eyes were hard. Davos wants proof. Fine. We'll give him proof. Davos's smile faltered. That's not necessary. You made the accusation. Now back it up. Kael turned to Mara. Unless you object. Every eye in the room fixed on her. This was it. The moment everything hinged on. She could refuse, say it was too dangerous, walk away, but that would confirm their doubts. And she was done running. Do it, she said. The test took place in Renna's workroom, a small space off the infirmary that smelled like herbs and old wood. Henrik prepared the ritual with nervous hands, a bowl of clear water, 3 drops of Kael's blood, a silver needle. Mara sat on the exam table, Kael standing beside her. Renna watched from the corner, expression unreadable. This will hurt, Henrik warned. I don't care. He pricked her finger, let 3 drops of her blood fall into the bowl. Nothing happened. Then he placed his hand over the water and spoke words Mara didn't understand. Old language, guttural and strange. The water began to glow, faint at first, then brighter. Gold light filled the bowl, spreading outward like dawn breaking. Henrik's eyes widened. It's bonded. The blood recognizes the line. Kael's hand found Mara's, squeezing tight. But that's impossible, Henrik whispered. The curse is broken, Renna said from the corner. Her voice was quiet, certain, or rather it never applied to this child in the first place. Henrik looked at her. How? Because the child wasn't conceived the way the curse expected. No touch, no claiming, no traditional bond. Renna's eyes were bright. It slipped through the gaps in the magic, and now it exists where it shouldn't. The light in the bowl faded slowly, leaving just water and blood. Henrik sat back, shaking. This is unprecedented. No, Renna said. This is exactly what we needed. They returned to the great hall together. The crowd was still there, waiting. Davos stood at the front, arms crossed, expression smug. That expression died when he saw their faces. Thorn stood. What did you find? The child is of the Draven bloodline, Henrik said, voice carrying across the hall. The magic confirms it. Silence. Then chaos. Shouts, questions. Denials from some, triumph from others. Davos's face went white. That's not possible. The test must be wrong. The test doesn't lie, Renna said, stepping forward. The child is blood bonded to Kael Draven, which means everything Mara claimed is true. But she went to a healer for questions, not treatment, not confirmation. Renna's voice was steel. You twisted facts to fit your narrative, but the truth doesn't care about your narrative. Davos looked at the council, panic creeping into his eyes. You can't believe this. It's enough. Thorn's voice was final. The test has spoken. The child is recognized by the bloodline. That settles the matter. It settles nothing. This is impossible. She's lying, or the magic is broken, or you were wrong, Kael said quietly. About everything. The weight of those words crushed the room into silence. Davos stared at Kael, then at Mara, then back at the council. This isn't over, he said, voice shaking. Yes, it is. Kael's tone was absolute. You're banished, effective immediately. You have until sunset to leave Frosthold. If you're still here after that, I'll consider it an act of aggression. You can't. I just did. Kael gestured to the guards. Escort him out. They moved forward. Davos tried to resist, but it was futile. As they dragged him toward the doors, he shouted back at the crowd. You're all fools. You're trusting a lie. This will destroy you. The doors slammed shut behind him. Silence settled over the hall. Then, slowly, people began to move, to talk, to process what they'd just witnessed. Thorn looked at Mara. It seems we owe you an apology. Mara's throat was tight. I don't need an apology. I need you to believe me. We do now. Thorn's expression was grave. The child is real. The bond is real. And that changes everything. What does it change? Mara asked. The future. Thorn glanced at Kael. If this child survives, the Draven line continues. The curse is broken. The Pax will have a future beyond this generation. If it survives, one of the other council members said. It will, Kael said firmly. I'll make sure of it. Thorn nodded slowly. Then we have work to do. Preparations to make. Alliances to solidify. She looked at Mara. And you, Mara Valen, are no longer just a contractor. You're the mother of the next heir. That comes with protection and responsibility. Mara's legs felt weak. I understand. Good. Thorn turned to the crowd. This assembly is concluded. Return to your duties. People began to disperse, but the weight of their attention lingered. Mara felt it like a physical thing. Expectation, hope, fear, all tangled together. Kael touched her arm. Come on, you need to sit down. She let him lead her out, Sarah and Renna following close behind. They ended up in Kael's study, a place Mara had only been a handful of times. Renna made her sit. Sarah brought water. Kael paced. You shouldn't have agreed to the test, he said finally. I had to. It could have gone wrong. But it didn't. Mara drank the water slowly. And now they know the truth. Some of them. Kael stopped pacing. Others will still doubt, still question. Let them. Her voice was steadier than she felt. I'm done trying to convince people who don't want to believe me. Renna smiled slightly. Good. That's the right attitude. Is it? Mara looked at her. Because I feel like I just put a target on my back. You did, Sarah said bluntly. But you also just proved you're not someone to underestimate. She's right, Kael said. Davos tried to destroy you. He failed. That sends a message. What message? That you're stronger than you look. Mara laughed, sharp and tired. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm barely holding it together. That's what strength looks like sometimes. Renna stood, joints creaking. You did well today, child. Better than well. You faced the worst they could throw at you and survived. Barely. Survival is survival. Renna headed for the door. Rest. Eat. And for the love of all that's holy, stop second-guessing yourself. She left. Sarah squeezed Mara's shoulder. I'll bring you dinner later. Try to sleep. Then she was gone too, leaving Mara alone with Kael. He sat down across from her, exhaustion clear in his posture. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what? For putting you through that. For not protecting you better. You can't protect me from everything. I can try. Kael, I mean it. His eyes met hers. You're carrying the future of my bloodline. That makes you... He stopped. That makes you important. To the pack. To me. The weight of those last two words hung between them. Mara's pulse quickened. Important how? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, I don't know yet, but I'm trying to figure it out. It wasn't a declaration, wasn't even close. but it was honest, and somehow that was enough. "Me too," Mara said softly. They sat in silence, the space between them charged with something neither of them had words for yet. Finally, Kael stood. "You should rest. I'll make sure no one disturbs you." "Thank you." He paused at the door. "Mara?" "Yeah?" "You were brave today. Braver than I've ever seen anyone be." His voice was rough. "Don't forget that." Then he was gone. Mara sat there in the quiet, hand on her stomach, feeling the flutter of movement beneath her palm. They'd survived. Both of them. And for the first time since this impossible thing had started, she let herself believe they might actually make it through. The next 3 months passed in a blur of preparation and change. The hold adjusted to the idea of an heir in ways both subtle and obvious. The council met more frequently. Allies from neighboring packs visited, assessing the situation. Rena appeared daily, monitoring Mara's health with relentless efficiency. And Mara grew. Not just physically, though that was undeniable, but in presence, in confidence, in the way she moved through the hold like she belonged there. Because she did. People who'd once whispered behind her back now greeted her openly. Children smiled when she passed. Even the wolves in the courtyard seemed to recognize her as something more than an outsider. Kael stayed close, but not oppressively so. He gave her space when she needed it, and support when she didn't ask but clearly needed it anyway. They didn't talk about what was happening between them, didn't name it, but it was there. In the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. In the way she found herself seeking him out without meaning to. In the quiet moments when words weren't necessary because presence was enough. One evening, 6 weeks before the child was due, Mara stood on the outer wall watching the sun set over the forest. Footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. "Shouldn't you be inside?" Kael asked, coming to stand beside her. "Probably. But I needed air." "Fair enough." He was quiet for a moment. "How are you feeling?" "Like I swallowed a boulder, and it's trying to kick its way out." He smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed his face, softening the hard edges. "That's normal, apparently," he said. "Rena's been talking to you. Constantly. She's terrifying. She likes you." "That's even more terrifying." Mara laughed, and the sound felt natural. Easy. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the light fade. Then Kael said, "I've been thinking." "About? What happens after?" Mara's pulse jumped. "After the birth? After everything. When the child is here. When the line is secured." He turned to face her. "What do you want?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know," she admitted. "That's fair, but I think—" He stopped, choosing his words carefully. "I think you should stay. Not just because of the child, but because I want you to." The honesty in his voice made her chest tight. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Because you fit here. Because the hold is better with you in it. Because—" He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Because I've spent 6 years ruling alone and I don't want to do that anymore." Mara's breath caught. This wasn't a declaration of love. Kyle wasn't built for flowery words or grand gestures, but it was real, and it was enough. "I'll think about it," she said. That's all I'm asking." He left her there with the sunset in her thoughts. Mara stood on the wall until the stars came out, hand on her stomach, feeling the life inside her move. "What do you want?" For the first time in her life, she didn't have an answer built on survival or necessity. She had a choice, and that terrified her more than anything else. The contractions started on a morning so cold the water in the wash basin had frozen overnight. Mara woke to pain, sharp, relentless, unmistakable. She barely made it to the door before Sarah appeared, taking one look at her face and running for Rena. The next hours blurred together, pain, pressure. Rena's voice calm and commanding, Kael's hand in hers, anchor strong. The sensation of her body tearing itself apart to make room for something new. She screamed, cursed, cried, and then finally, a different sound. A cry. Thin and furious. "It's a girl," Rena said, voice thick with emotion. "A healthy girl." Mara collapsed back against the pillows, gasping. Rena cleaned the baby quickly, wrapped her in soft cloth and placed her in Mara's arms. The world narrowed to the tiny face staring up at her, eyes dark and unfocused, skin red and wrinkled, fingers curled into impossibly small fists. "She's perfect," Mara whispered. "She's yours," Rena said softly. Kael moved closer, looking down at the child with an expression Mara had never seen on his face before. Wonder. And something deeper. "Can I—" He stopped. "Hold her," Mara said. He took the baby carefully, like she might break. The child looked absurdly small in his arms. And then she opened her eyes, and they flashed gold. Just for a second, but unmistakable. Wolf eyes. Rena gasped. "The bond! It's already there!" Kael stared down at the child, something breaking open in his expression. "She's real," he said, voice rough. "She's actually real." "Of course she's real," Mara said, exhausted but smiling. "No, I mean—" He looked at her. "The line continues. The curse is broken. This is—" He stopped, unable to finish. Mara understood anyway. This was everything he'd been told would never happen. And it was here, in his arms, breathing and crying and undeniably alive. "What will you name her?" Rena asked. Mara looked at Kael. He looked back. And in that moment, something shifted between them. Something final and irrevocable. They were bound now. Not by magic or politics, by choice. "Lyra," Mara said. "Her name is Lyra." Kael repeated it softly, testing the sound. "Lyra Draven." The baby made a small noise, and Kael's expression softened even further. Rena smiled. "It's a good name. Strong." She left them alone, closing the door quietly behind her. Kael sat on the edge of the bed, still holding Lyra. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For staying, for fighting, for—" He looked down at the baby. "For this." Mara reached out, touching Lyra's tiny hand. The baby's fingers wrapped around hers instinctively. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "No, but you could have run. You didn't." "Neither did you." He looked at her then, and the weight of everything unspoken passed between them. They'd survived, all three of them, and whatever came next, they'd face it together. Mutt. The news spread through the hold like wildfire. By evening, the entire pack knew. A girl, healthy, undeniably pack-blooded. The first heir born to the Draven line in 3 generations. People came to pay respects. Council members, guards, servants, pack elders. They brought gifts, offered congratulations, and looked at Lyra with expressions ranging from hope to awe. Thorn arrived with the rest of the council, studying the baby with sharp eyes. "She has the mark," Thorn said, noting the faint gold in Lyra's gaze. "The bond is clear." "It is," Kael said. "Then the line is secured. The packs will want to meet her, to see proof that the curse is broken." "In time," Kael said firmly. "Right now she needs rest. They both do." Thorn nodded. "Of course, but understand, this changes everything. The political landscape, the alliances, even the internal structure of the hold." "I know." "And Mara?" Thorn turned to her. "You're no longer an outsider. You're the mother of the heir. That comes with protection, but also scrutiny." "I understand," Mara said quietly. "Good." Thorn's expression softened slightly. "You did well, better than anyone expected." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement, and that was enough. The council left. The visitors trickled away. Night fell over Frosthold, quiet and cold. Mara lay in bed, Lyra sleeping in a cradle beside her, and felt the weight of exhaustion settle over her like a blanket. She'd done it. Survived the impossible, proved the doubters wrong, brought a life into the world that wasn't supposed to exist. And now she had to figure out what came next. A soft knock made her look up. Kael stood in the doorway. "Can I come in?" "Yeah." He entered, moving quietly so as not to wake Lyra. He sat in the chair beside the cradle, watching the baby sleep. "She's beautiful," he said. "She is. She has your stubbornness." Mara smiled. "How can you possibly know that already?" "I can tell." He looked at her. "What are you thinking?" "That I have no idea what I'm doing." Neither do I. That's not reassuring. Wasn't trying to be. He was quiet for a moment. But we'll figure it out, together. The word together settled between them, heavy with meaning. Is that what you want? Mara asked. Together? Cale didn't answer right away. Then he said, I spent 6 years believing I'd be alone. That the line would end with me. That everything I built would turn to dust the moment I was gone. He looked down at Lyra. And then you showed up and turned all of that upside down. I didn't mean to. I know. That's what makes it real. He met her eyes. You didn't come here with a plan. You didn't manipulate or scheme. You just existed. And somehow that was enough to break a curse and give me something I thought I'd never have. A daughter. A future. His voice was rough. And I don't want to face that future alone. Mara's throat tightened. What are you asking? Stay. Not as a contractor. Not as someone under my protection, but as... He stopped, struggling with the words. As someone who chooses to be here. With me. With her. Because you want to, not because you have to. It wasn't a proposal. Wasn't even close to traditional. But it was honest and vulnerable, and more than she'd ever expected from him. Mara looked at Lyra, sleeping peacefully, tiny chest rising and falling. Then she looked at Kyle, waiting for her answer. What do you want? For so long she'd answered that question with survival, with necessity. But now she wanted something different. All right, she said quietly. I'll stay. Relief flooded Kael's expression. You mean it? Yeah, I do. He reached across the space between them, taking her hand, and for the first time since arriving at Frosthold, Mara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. 3 weeks later, on a morning bright with snow and sunlight, Mara stood in the frozen courtyard with Lyra wrapped against her chest. The entire hold had gathered, pack members, servants, guards, everyone. Rena stood at the center, staff in hand, looking every bit the elder she was. 53 years ago, Rena's voice carried across the courtyard, a curse was placed on this bloodline. It said no Alpha's son would father a living child. For 3 generations, that curse held. Until now. She gestured to Mara and Lyra. This child, Lyra Draven, was born outside the curse's parameters, conceived without touch, bonded without claiming, proof that even the strongest magic has limits. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. She is the first heir born to this line in 50 years, Rena continued, and she represents a new beginning, not just for the Draven bloodline, but for all of us. Kael stepped forward, standing beside Mara. Rena looked at them both. The curse is broken, the line continues, and the future begins now. The crowd erupted in cheers. Mara looked down at Lyra, who blinked up at her with those gold-flecked eyes, and felt something settle deep in her chest. This was real. All of it. The impossible had become possible, and she'd been part of making it happen. Kael's hand found hers, squeezing gently. She squeezed back. The crowd began to disperse, but Mara stayed where she was, looking out over the hold. This place had been cold and unwelcoming when she'd first arrived, a fortress built on suspicion and survival. But now it felt like something else, like home. Rena approached, smiling. You did well, child. I had help. You did, but you made the choice to stay. That was all you. Rena's eyes were warm. The hold is better for it. She walked away, leaving Mara and Kael alone in the courtyard. What are you thinking? Kael asked. Mara looked up at him. That I came here to pay a debt, and I ended up with a family instead. Is that a bad thing? No, she smiled. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Kael's expression softened. Me too. Lyra made a small sound and they both looked down at her. She's going to be trouble, Mara said. Probably, but she'll be strong. Kael's voice was certain. Like her mother. Mara's chest tightened. I'm not that strong. Yes, you are. You just don't see it yet. Maybe he was right. Or maybe strength wasn't about being fearless. Maybe it was about being terrified and choosing to stay anyway. Either way, Mara had made her choice. And she wasn't looking back. Together, they walked back inside, Lyra sleeping peacefully between them. The future was uncertain, dangerous probably. But for the first time in her life, Mara wasn't facing it alone. And that made all the difference. The hold's gates closed behind them, shutting out the cold. Inside, warmth waited, and with it, the beginning of something new. Spring came to Frosthold slowly, like the land itself was learning to breathe again. Mara stood at the window of her room, their room now, though that shift had happened so gradually she couldn't pinpoint when, watching ice melt from the courtyard stones. Lyra slept in her cradle, 3 months old and already showing signs of the wolf she'd become. Her eyes tracked movement with unsettling focus. Her grip was stronger than any infant's should be, and twice, Rena had found her making sounds that weren't quite human. "She's going to be interesting," Rena had said, which Mara had learned was the old woman's way of saying, "Prepare yourself." The door opened. Cale entered, carrying reports from the northern border. He set them on the desk, then moved to the cradle, looking down at their daughter with the same expression of cautious wonder he'd worn since her birth. "She's getting bigger," he said. "That's what babies do." "I know, but it feels fast." Mara joined him, shoulder brushing his. "Scared?" "Terrified." He didn't look away from Lyra. "I have no idea how to raise a child, especially not one like her." "Neither do I, but we'll figure it out." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." She touched his arm. "We've survived everything else. We'll survive this too." Cale finally looked at her, and something in his expression made her pulse quicken. "What?" she asked. "I've been thinking. That's dangerous." He smiled slightly. "The council wants to make it official. You and me. A bonding ceremony." Mara's breath caught. "What did you tell them?" "That I'd ask you first. And if I say no, then we don't do it." His voice was steady. "But I think we should." "Why?" "Because you're already my partner in everything that matters. Because Lyra deserves parents who are bound by more than circumstance." He paused. "And because I want to." The honesty in those last words hit harder than any declaration could have. Mara looked down at Lyra, then back at Kael. A year ago, she'd arrived at this hold desperate and alone, planning to finish a job and disappear. She'd had no future beyond surviving the next week. Now she had a daughter, a home, and a man who'd staked everything on her being worth it. "All right," she said quietly. Kael's eyes widened slightly. "All right? Yeah. Let's make it official." Something broke open in his expression, relief and joy and something deeper that had no name yet. He pulled her close, careful not to wake Lyra, and pressed his forehead to hers. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For choosing this. For choosing me." Mara's throat tightened. "You chose me first. Best decision I ever made." They stood there, wrapped in each other, while Lyra slept and the world outside continued to thaw. The bonding ceremony took place 4 weeks later, on the first truly warm day of spring. The courtyard was transformed, banners in deep blue and silver, torches blazing despite the daylight, the entire pack assembled in their finest clothes. Mara wore a dress Sarah had helped her choose, simple, elegant, the color of new snow. Her hair was loose, the way Kael had mentioned once that he preferred it. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and strangely, completely sure. Rena officiated, standing before them with the weight of her years and wisdom evident in every word. "A bond between wolves is not just ceremony," she said, voice carrying across the courtyard. "It's a promise, a choice made in full knowledge of what it means, to stand beside someone through strength and weakness, joy and grief, victory and failure." She looked at Mara. "Do you choose this bond knowing what it requires?" Mara's voice was steady. "I do." Rena turned to Kael. "And do you choose this bond knowing what it requires?" "I do." "Then by the old laws and the new, I bind you together. What is chosen here cannot be unchosen. What is promised here cannot be unpromised." She took their hands, wrapping them with a silver cord that gleamed in the sunlight. "You are bound, in sight of the pack, in sight of all that matters." The cord fell away, but the weight of the bond remained. Kael pulled Mara close and kissed her. Not gentle, not uncertain, but with the certainty of someone who'd found something worth keeping. The crowd erupted in cheers, When they broke apart, Mara was breathless and smiling. "That was dramatic," she said. "You expected subtle? From you? Always." He laughed, and the sound was so rare and genuine that it made her chest ache. They turned to face the pack. Their pack now, truly, and Mara felt the shift in how people looked at her, not as an outsider anymore, as one of them. The celebration lasted long into the night. Food, music, stories told around fires that burned bright against the darkness. Mara sat with Lara on her lap, watching Kael speak with pack elders. Sarah appeared with drinks, settling beside her. "How does it feel?" Sarah asked. "Surreal." "Good surreal or bad surreal?" "Good, I think." Mara looked down at Lyra, who was watching the flames with intense focus. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong." "Nothing's going to go wrong." "You don't know that." "No, but I know you're stronger than whatever comes next." Sarah raised her cup. "To surviving the impossible." Mara clinked her cup against Sarah's. "To surviving." They drank, and the night stretched on, full of warmth and laughter, and the kind of hope that only comes after surviving the worst. When the fires finally died down and people began to drift away, Kael found Mara and pulled her close. "Ready to go?" he asked. "More than ready." They walked back to their quarters together, Lyra asleep against Mara's shoulder, and for the first time since everything began, Mara felt like she could breathe. Inside, Kael helped her settle Lyra in the cradle, then turned to face her. "I meant what I said earlier," he said quietly. "Best decision I ever made." Mara smiled. "You're not so bad yourself." "That's almost a compliment." "Don't let it go to your head." He pulled her close, and they stood there in the quiet, holding each other while their daughter slept. Outside, the world continued to turn. Challenges would come, threats would emerge, nothing was guaranteed, but they'd face it together, and somehow that was enough. Mara closed her eyes and let herself feel the weight of everything they'd built. Not perfect, not easy, but real. The debt was paid. The curse was broken. The impossible had become possible. And in the end, the woman who'd arrived at Frosthold with nothing but thread and nerve had found something she'd never expected. A family. A future. A home. Not because it was easy, but because she'd chosen it. And that choice had changed everything.